Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagolu. So, to the aftermath of what's been an extraordinary couple of days in the Nigerian National Assembly, both houses finally passing the long-awaited Electoral Act amendment bill. They went through it clause by clause, but when it got to the bit that deals with the electronic transmission of election results, the approval was made conditional on the Electoral Commission getting clearance from the National Communications Commission and approval from the National Assembly before it can electronically transmit ballot results in any area of Nigeria. Expectedly, the move sparked walkouts from the opposition and sharp rebuke from civil society, with many accusing the lawmakers of weakening the independence of the Electoral Commission, which is constitutionally charged with conducting elections independently, and of overstepping Parliament's constitutional authority as a law-making arm of government to approve a decision that should be within the compass of the executive.
And we could not agree as to the mode of accepting whether to go for electronic transmission or not. In that process, the Deputy Minority Leader moved for an amendment. In his amendment, he posited that he wanted that amendment should read that the next election should be by electronic transmission of results. And eventually, the chairman sitting refused to listen to the amendment. And that is the Deputy Speaker of the House, who is the chairman of the Committee of the Whole. The Speaker tried to intervene, and when we could not reach an agreement, we had to adjourn, and a decision was taken by the House that we should invite INEC and SCC to talk about the ability to ensure that results are transmitted electronically all over the country. But to our greatest surprise, upon resumption this morning, we found out that INEC was asked to stay back. And we tried to inquire why. And they told us that because they do not want INEC to be seen to be biased. And
apologies for the rather wobbly picture there, but there was an impossible crush of people trying to get what the PDP spokesman there was saying. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Secretary General of the Conference of Nigeria Political Parties, Chief Willy Ezugwu, and by the lawyer and former Director of Legal Services at the Independent National Electoral Commission, Osaze Uzzi Oluwole. Thank you very much indeed to both of you for coming in. And I'll start with you, Chief. Contention, disputation, trailing the decision of the National Assembly. What's your reaction to what has happened with regard to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, and specifically the clause that deals with the electronic transmission of election results?
Thank you so much. You see, it's quite very, very unfortunate that Nigeria has so much degenerated up to this extent. We are not surprised the kind of government we are running today. I can tell you the last National Assembly, or rather the last Senate we had in this country, was that of 8th Senate, led by Saraki. But today, what we are seeing today is as if we are still in the military regime, where you have no voice, where you cannot speak, whether you like it or not, where they don't even mind again the majority of the Nigerians what they want, where they don't care whether civil society, whether the public, whether the masses have decided to, say they want something. They don't want to know.
Right. Well, I'm going to bring in Mr. Oluwole in a minute, because not only does he have legal experience and constitutional experience, I mean, he was he worked with INEC in a legal capacity.
Yes.
But let me ask you this. What's wrong with the National Assembly saying that they are concerned about the lack of connectivity across the country, and therefore there should be, the NCC should be brought in to work with INEC to assess and determine the level of coverage in Nigeria and subsequently take a decision and report back to the National Assembly, which will then review the issue of electronic transmission of election results. I mean, the concern seemed to be that they don't want to disenfranchise any part of Nigeria.
Thank you so much for this question. I really expected this question. One, who appointed the DG or the chairman of NCC? Two, what they mean by INEC? It is Independent Electoral Commission. There is no organ, call it executive, call it legislature, call it judiciary, that can interfere with INEC rights. INEC had the sole authority to conduct an election in this country. So whatever they are coming up with, how can you know how Nigeria how this country has been going? By the time after the election, for them to do electrical transmission, they'll have to refer to NCC. I mean, hey, you know what will happen.
Right, okay.
We don't believe on that.
Right. Let me bring in Mr. Oluwole there, because it seems like this is a constitutional question. I mean, some have suggested that the decision to make the electronic transmission of election results conditional on clearance by the NCC and approval by the National Assembly and all the rest of it is unconstitutional. From your position as a lawyer and former director of legal services at INEC, what is your assessment?
I certainly do agree with that proposition that it is unconstitutional for any body to try to interfere in the operational efficiency of the Commission of INEC, because Section 78 has given INEC the power. Section 78 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, none of the amendments touch on that particular section, says that in terms of superintending the elections, supervising conduct of the elections, the power rests with INEC. Not only in Section 78, to reinforce the point, if you look at the third schedule, I think it's paragraph 15, equally spells out the powers of INEC as it pertains to conduct, organizing of elections. It doesn't make it subject to any other body. And don't forget, the Communication Commission does not exist under the Constitution. It exists by virtue of a law of the national, which is subordinate to the Constitution of the land. The Constitution is supreme. Section 1 is very clear on that. And any law which tries to run contrary to the Constitution, any provision of the Constitution, is void, is absolutely of no effect to the extent of that contradiction. And subjecting INEC, limiting its powers, donated to it by the Constitution, trying to limit it by any law trying to do that, to that extent, is void.
But are they actually doing that, though? I mean, they're simply saying that the NCC needs to sort of look at the country and say, well, in this part of the place, it's not a good idea to do. I mean, they're not laying down the law for INEC, are they?
Well, they are. That's the point.
I mean, the NCC is what I mean.
They are. That's the effect. And we say we're not ready for it, then what happens? With the clause as passed, if they say so, then INEC cannot go ahead to deploy technology, the technology for the electronic transmission of those results.
So take us into INEC. I mean, you've worked there for many years. You understand the way that they think. You're also a lawyer. Yes. So you understand, you've got the benefit of the legal aspect of things. Why do you think the National Assembly, who voted to weaken this clause, did so? I mean, was it a tactical move that was inspired by party loyalty, by selfish interest? What do you reckon?
Well, if I render an opinion on that, then I'll be speculating, because I don't know. I don't know what informed their mind. Nobody from the utterances, you cannot decide that this is what informed it. Things must have happened, obviously. And those who say untoward things happen, unnecessary pressure was being brought to bear on them, there's some, I don't have any evidence of that, but with the behavior. And let me tell you a curious thing. A lot of the sponsors of this bill have all been for electronic transmission. This bill was sponsored by the Deputy Senate President and the Chairman of the committee in the Senate. And if you look at the earlier provisions of that bill, it was specific, it was clear, none of them ever said so. The House, the same thing. The Committee on Electoral Matters was all in support. So why this vote-of-face? Why this about turn? something must have happened, and relatively recently, because we've been on this bill for more than 1 year. I'm not one of those who likes to speculate, who likes to say things, but when you add all this together, there's circumstantial evidence to show that there has been a change of mind for the worse. It's a good question.
Sure.
What informed that? Maybe they should come here and explain to Nigerians
Well, we're working on that. But
Great.
I mean, Chief Ezugwu, is there an element of ethnicity being injected into this? Because I mean, whenever things happen in Nigeria, you have to worry about that nettlesome element, because the Yoruba sociocultural group Afenifere condemned what has happened, as did the Igbo socio-political organization Ohaneze Ndigbo. But the Arewa Consultative Forum, which is a political and socio-cultural association of northern leaders, endorsed the Senate's action.
Thank you so much, too. You see, there's no smoke without fire. And the country where me and you are coming from is no longer a country that lives on the truth, on sincerity or purpose. There's no way. I'm happy that the INEC man sitting by my side has said so much thing how this particular bill came about. And every of their committees accepted. And you know, if you don't transmit the election by electronic method, what it implies again is going of writing result and carry the result boxes when the result is being called.
Which makes them potentially manipulable.
Which makes them to manipulate the election again. They knew quite all right that 99% of them in the House of Rep and the Senate were not elected. It was fraudulently elected. And that is why they are protecting it. That is why, if I should say, my dear brother, that the election of 2023, the result has been written, and they are just waiting.
Right. Well, I can't speculate on that because I don't have any evidence to support.
I'm not speculating. If not, where on earth should somebody turn white or black in front of every Nigerian?
Right.
It's not a matter of ethnicity or religion or whatever. Mind you, how many civil society involved in this game? Mind you, have been clamoring on this particular issue. And all of a sudden, for you to see the PDP to walk out in the House of Rep will tell you what's happened.
Right. But of course,
and at the same time,
it seemed to be divided along party lines.
The most important thing, me and you are not in the National Assembly. But being Nigerians, we know what is right and wrong.
Okay, I've got to bring him in because we've got a minute before we have to take a break, but we'll come back and keep talking. Mr. Oluwole, I mean, the idea from the INEC's point of view is that they're allowing smart card readers, which is electronic. They're allowing electronic voting, which is clearly electronic, but they're not allowing electronic transmission of results. That seems a bit perverse, doesn't it?
Sure is. Seems ironic. really, really ironic. It's the same basic thing that it's all electronically done. So you're allowing the carried out for voting, but you're not allowing it for the transmission of results. The carried out when reconfigured can do that. But INEC has gone one stage further and done the Z-Pad. The Z-Pad is a tablet which can do both. So you disable it. You use it, enable it for two, several things. It's used for the register is on that part. The accreditation is with that part. The voting is with that part. But you're telling Nigerians it should not be used for the transmission. There's something untoward there.
Well, let's come back and talk some more about this. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the developments, the controversy swirling around the passage of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, barely a week ago, the Conference of Nigeria Political Parties, which is the umbrella body of all registered political parties and political associations in Nigeria, cautioned the National Assembly not to in its words, destroy democracy in the country by voting against the transmission of the election results electronically. The Secretary General of the CNPP, Willy Ezugwu, who is one of my guests today, had warned that the lawmakers would be, in his words, deliberately pitching Nigerians against the Buhari administration if the clause banning the electronic transmission of results is allowed to scale through Parliament. Well, it has now gone through, passed by both houses of the Nigerian Parliament. So, what happens next? And with me in the studio, the Secretary General of the Conference of Nigeria Political Parties, Chief Willy Ezugwu, and the lawyer and former Director of Legal Services at the Independent National Electoral Commission, Osaze Uzzi Oluwole. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And let me come to you, Mr. Oluwole, because, I mean, we're talking now about the options. What is the option for those who oppose the weakening of that clause? Is it inevitably going to end up in the courts as the only way to turn things around?
Well, we hope it does not. It's not everything that should really be should go to courts. The court is a last resort. So all attempts to resolve things now probably has to be put into gear. And
yeah, but how do you mean resolve?
Yeah, that's what
they've passed the
both houses have passed.
Yeah.
There are different, I presume, different versions of the bill. There has to be a conference between the
Senate and
to harmonize their different positions. And if the clauses as passed are exactly the same, then they might not touch it, or they might have a rethink. We're hoping that with the voice of reason happening to them, they'll have a rethink. But there's still one more opportunity, because that bill still has to go before the president. And we've had in the past where the president refused to give assent to certain clauses in bills. It has happened to Electoral Act of 2002. The President Obasanjo then refused to give his assent and said agreed that this was wrong, agreed with INEC. In their, I don't want to use that word stubbornness, but in their resolve, steely resolve, they said no, they thought they were right, and they passed the bill with a veto override. But of course, utilizing, as usual, the wrong process and procedure. So that was struck down by the courts and said, no, you cannot do that. INEC now went to court. When you now try to take what the Constitution has given to me, you cannot take it through the back door. The Constitution gave it to me through the front door. You cannot. If you want to take it from me, then go back and amend the Constitution, which is a more difficult process. So they in a haughty manner said, I think the first Senate said, no, First National Assembly said, we won't do that. And then we, unfortunately and regrettably, went to court. We've been to court once on a similar issue. Why do you have to now wait again a second time and let INEC, an institution of state, take you, another institution of state, both created by the same constitution? Why do you wait for that to happen? But inevitably, that is the way in a democracy to resolve problems, challenges, and differences. That's the way. So if it has to be that way, then lawyers have to dust up their weekend gown and to be prepared.
And assuming, Chief Ezugwu, assuming it doesn't go to court, as Mr. Oluwole said there, it ends up on the desk of President Buhari, which it inevitably will. Mr. Buhari does not have, and that's not suggesting that he had any ulterior motives in the past, but he doesn't clearly have any underlying incentive this time because he's not running again.
Well, from what have happened between the executive and the National Assembly today, there's no way Mr. President will not endorse this particular issue. There's no two ways. It's just like that of Onochie we're talking about. What the majority of people decided that made Onochie not to be confirmed is not what the Senate used. Rather, they used federal character, which federal character have not been existing again in this particular regime. But they went ahead to use federal character to say that is what disqualifies Onochie, which means the person representing them, by the time he completes his tenure by December, they will still present Onochie again, just like what you saw in Mangu case. Now, as far as I'm concerned, National Assembly should not think that they are overall. They should remember they are representing some people, the entire Nigerians. And I'll bet you, whether they like it or not, I'm happy they will have competent, credible lawyers in this country, constitutional lawyers, who definitely will go to court. And before then, if Mr. President should endorse this satanic bill, if Mr. President should endorse this satanic bill, I will tell you, Nigerians will now tell them, we own you people. You people are working for us. Out of the taxpayers' money, we pay you people. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, let Buhari, we always have been pleading, let Buhari use this particular free and fair election 2023 because he's not contested. If he doesn't have anything behind it, he should give it to Nigeria. Let it be one single thing Nigerians can say we have this particular government has done for us. Whereby they don't do it. My brother, a lot of things will be quite unfortunate will happen.
Mr. Oluwole, is there a middle ground here? Is there a compromise that can be reached that in some ways gives these people who seem to, on the face of it, be worried that there isn't enough coverage in Nigeria to justify electronic transmission, and that this is going to disenfranchise a lot of people if it is allowed to happen? Is there a middle ground that can be reached on that?
Well, there is no middle ground when it comes to talk of protecting the integrity of our electoral process, in terms of strengthening institutions of state in defense of freedom, in defense of liberty, in defense of our democracy. But there are ways we can resolve this. And I don't share the pessimistic outlook of Chief. He may be right, I don't know, the only time will tell. To be fair to this president, last time, people forget and tend to forget, and I think you have a duty, all of us have a duty to keep reminding people what happened, that the president initially refused to give his assent to that bill when it was passed by the last Senate, by the last National Assembly. Part of it was because the order of elections. We've been down this path before, apart from the 2000 and 2003 period. We were there last 2 years ago. When they refused to, they said, look, they now try to order the elections. Now, the president, to be fair, I think well advised, I believe, by the Attorney General of the Federation, said, no, because of this order of elections, they back down then. You shouldn't do that. And that's part of the reason why he refused to give his assent. So let's be fair to him. Let's hope that we'll harken back to those days and he would get proper advice, and there's a precedent for that already. So I am a little bit probably more optimistic. So that middle ground, that's the first step towards that, getting that middle ground, getting this issue resolved without necessarily going to litigation. There can be mediation, there can be conciliation, there can be alternative dispute resolution mechanisms deployed into this. They come and see reason. And that's interesting. I thought the opportunity was lost this morning because they invited the INEC chairman, you invited the NCC. It's only fair that two of them should have been there. But you took a decision based on what it was wisdom in yesterday's advice. I don't know what informed that, and they should explain to Nigerians why they stood down the invitation to the INEC. And probably, INEC, if need be, will have confronted the NCC.
Absolutely.
We have worked together before. We have resolved this thing. We have said how it could be done. You promised us, you told us it could be done. So why this volte-face? You know, and I'm sure the director there was part of that of the team, or there are people who were in the commission then are still in the NCC who worked with as a team, and there's a report by that group of people, including technical people from INEC, technical people from the NCC. What has changed since that time? On the rather, I think the spread and penetration of the internet has improved since 2018
Absolutely.
when that was done. Will they hack into reason? I don't know, but there's a middle ground. And okay, they have not said anything about the non-deployment of the Z-pad in other areas, or whatever technology device in other areas. These same people use telephones. And the good thing about this is, look, we can give you certain reassurance. Technology is not a cure-all. Let's be clear about that one. It's not a cure-all. And there are cyber issues. There are all sorts of challenges that we must watch out for. Unfortunately, we're not debating those things. We're debating other mundane things. And the real issues that should be in controversy, that should attract our attention at time, is not being looked at because of this procedural mundane things. Now,
okay, I'm really sorry about this, but we are actually out of time. I was going to give you the last word, but he makes a lot of sense. We let him have the last word. But I want to thank you very much indeed, Chief Willy Ezugwu, who is Secretary General of the Conference of Nigerian Political Parties, as well as, of course, Osaze Uzzi Oluwole, who is a lawyer and former Director of Legal Services at the Independent National Electoral Commission. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Cape Town in South Africa, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.